Hello. It's some dust or something. I was asked recently by a viewer named Georgie L to give my thoughts on the Lambeosaurus post TLC update, and I think that's definitely worth going over. It's had a lot of changes, definitely not the dinosaur it used to be. Some for better, some for worse, but we're gonna get into it. Obviously, the first thing I have to say is the new model is awesome. The old one was kind of blobby. The new one has really good definition and attention to detail. Even the skins have been changed, and they're all like really intricate and colorful and, like I said, detailed. So really awesome. And the ability to stand. For those of you that don't know, the Lambeosaurus had its crouch replaced with a stand, which is cool for both like an immersive kind of detail, but it does have practical applications as well, and we'll get into that. But before I talk about the new Lamb, I'd like to talk about the old one, because it was like a main of mine. Now, this was several updates ago. I used to really love the Lambeo being a primarily solo player, because it could heal itself, which at the time it was the only dinosaur that could do that. Now there's the Metri that can do that as well, and on top of being able to heal itself, it had just a devastating tail attack. It did 40 damage, and I think it had like a 1-second cooldown. So really spammable, and it hurt really bad. It had not the greatest speed, but it was serviceable for tail kiting. Had really good stamina. Just in general was a really solid dino with great bulk as well. Now after the TLC, that bulk has been mitigated tremendously. The Lambeosaurus now has the 4th lowest health out of all the herbivores. It has 525 health, which is, that's pretty bad. But the combat weight is 3,500, which kind of helps to make up for that. That's the same combat weight as Despledo and Albertoceratops. The speed has been upped a little bit. Its speed is now 1,000. And it does have access to Lone Survivor, which can bump it up to keep up with those mid-tiers like, the Deinonychus and the Styraco. The stamina is not super incredible. It's pretty middling. But it does get long distance runner, which can help. And I was talking earlier about that standing stance. There's a cool thing where when you're in that pose, you actually regain stamina really quickly. It's like almost twice as fast, I think, maybe twice as fast. And you can recover that quickly even when you're walking. So you would recover more stamina while walking in the upright pose than you would just standing still on all fours, which is really nice for putting distance between you and a pursuer. You can kind of wait until they run out of stam, and when they sit down to rest, you can just stand up and walk away, regaining pretty good stamina while also putting more distance between the two of you. And another good thing the Lambeo has in this regard is it has knockback on its tail attack now, which is really solid for keeping them off you. If they do kind of catch up, you can go into your two-legged stance to regain some stamina, hit them with the tail attack to get some knockback, and if you really need help with your stamina recovery, there is a 10% stam regeneration subspecies you can pick. In fact, the footage for this video is going to be me regrowing my lamb to adult after switching to this subspecies, because Alderon has a habit of changing the effects of the subspecies with like every major update. And whatever I had it before, I think I had it as like a faster call cooldown. In this update, it was like health regen plus 3%. So I wanted that plus 10% stam. It also has a lot of abilities to help with its swimming speed, so situationally you could use that to get away from threats. The thing about the Lambeo, it's like a utility knife of a dino. It has 3 sets of calls you can go with, and this is what it's most known for, or its calling abilities. For one, it has a healing call set in which you can heal yourself, or you can heal your herd and remove any status effects quicker from your herd. So things like bone break and bleed and venom, you can work through those faster with that last call. It's also got a combat set, which is pretty good. It can increase your herd's damage output and their armor, and it can also nerf the damage of attacking enemies. And the last is a survival set, and it does things like lessen the food and water drain, increase your herd's trot speed, and also it has this one really weird one where like it makes it to where your herd takes incredibly reduced damage, but they also can't deal damage. It's very strange. Out of all those, I would say the healing set is definitely the most useful, and one of the cool things that this update has done has allowed you to use multiple calls. It used to be you would spec into one or the other, but with the voices coming in sets, now you've got your solo heal, and you can also use your herd heal and status heal call. So lots that you can do, and that's a pretty good improvement. When we look at the offenses on this thing, it's not incredible. It has a forward-facing kick attack. It deals 30 damage, and I think it does double when you're standing, which, I mean, 60 damage, that's pretty good. But for the most part, it's nothing spectacular. Your combat weight's only sort of middle of the road. Definitely not high compared to a lot of your contemporary herbivores. The tail attack only does 20. It used to do 40, and the cooldown got nerfed as well. It went from like a 1 second cooldown to a 3 second, but it does do knockback now, which kind of helps in making up for that extra time. And the last move I really want to talk about is the rodeo kick. Now this is the big damaging move. It does plenty of damage. I don't know the exact number, but I do know you will visibly see that it takes a chunk off of whatever you hit's health pretty immediately. It also does really good knockback, but you can only use it when on all fours, and it does consume stamina, not just a little bit either. So I would only use it to like finish up a larger dinosaur, maybe after tail kiting them for a while and wearing them down, or for anything smaller, your size or smaller that comes up and tries to take a bite of you or whatever. This rodeo kick's gonna make them double think their life decisions very quickly. But if you are going to use it a lot, I would definitely use it intermittently so that you can regain some stam, because otherwise you could find yourself in a pretty bad position. The low health and the inability to heal while bleeding means that you really want to avoid bleed like the plague, so things like the conch and the sty, which can run as fast as you on land, usually faster, unless you're really spec'd into it. They're going to deal bleed to you, which is going to prohibit you from using your healing call. Well, not using it. You'll be able to use it, you just won't regain any health. Luckily, the conch is really squishy, so tail kiting can wear it down and send it flying as well because it has such low combat weight. The sty is more formidable, and the only thing you really have on it is the slower swimming speed, because the Lambeo actually has a pretty decent swim sprint speed of 400. That's the same as the conch, and it has plenty of ways that you can spec into swim speed if you wanted to go that route. I wouldn't necessarily do that because what's in the water? Sarcos, sucos, spinos, ducks, they're all going to eat you alive. I mean, you just don't have the bulk to put up with that. Even in short distances, they can do a lot of damage very quickly to a Lambeo. So I don't know if I would go that route, but situationally, if you're being chased by a sty or something, you have like double the swim sprint just by default. So you could go into the water and lose it that way, I guess. The other noticeable threats are like Pycnos, who can keep up with you and outdamage you very easily. Aloe is another one to keep an eye out. Deals bleed, obviously. In this last update, the bleed on the Aloe was buffed, and it has more health and weight, so 1-in-1 engagements are pretty unfavorable. An Aloe that's spec'd into like speed and stamina could definitely, be a problem. Usually, when I'm engaging with other dinos as a Lambeo, as this new Lambeo anyway, what I like to do is keep them behind me and tail kite. It's the same as the old way, it's just you're playing it a little differently. You're using that knockback to make them expend more stamina while you save up yours. So if it's something small, like the other day I was being chased by like a conch and a meg and a dasp, I want to say, and I got away doing this. What I would do is tail attack the conch and the meg as they caught up to me and sprint from the dasp. And when the dasp sat down to regain stamina, I would stand on my hind legs to improve my own stamina regen while still being able to use the tail attack on the other two, and then start sprinting again when the dasp got up. And by doing this, I was able to prolong the fight pretty much forever. I just kept going and going. The damage I was taking was minimal compared to what the other ones. Obviously, taking tail shots to the head from something with higher combat weight than you is not going to be fun for the meg and the conch. And eventually they gave up and just turned around and let me be. So that's something you can do. And if you're worried about stamina conservation, as you probably should be as this thing, because you're going to be running from as many, if not more, fights than you'll be actually engaging in. What I like to do as well is when I'm questing, I'll sprint to a node of like acorns or lakeweed or something. And then as I'm collecting them, I'll stand on my hind legs, because you can still collect when you're doing that. And it will regen your stamina while you're collecting, which is pretty nice. As I already covered, you're definitely going to want to avoid bleed, because you have low health, but your ability to heal yourself mid-fight is really good for longevity. Avoid bleed, but also bone break, because if you get bone broken, it's pretty much a death sentence. Against something like an Anno, or maybe even a dasp, you could potentially use your healing call to kind of make up for the damage you'll be taking, and then use your tail attack to keep them back for long enough that you could heal and then take off. But you're really gambling. I don't think it's going to be a consistent way to get out of that situation. So the best way to go about it is just when they're readying those attacks, you know, all three of those dinosaurs, when they're using their bone break attack, there's a clear tell. And usually it takes a minute to charge up. So when they're doing that, just stay completely clear of them. And then you can go back into, fighting whenever they finally miss. But otherwise, if you get bone broken, more often than not, it's a death sentence. It's really not good. But the Lambeo, if you know how it works and you know where it lands in the greater roster of the game, you can be pretty successful with it. As a solo player, of course, I always loved Lone Survivor being available and Long Distance Runner. And for something speedy and something that has good options to conserve and regain stamina, as well as the ability to heal, those are all major picks. And of course, you don't have to play solo as this thing. This is definitely designed to be more of a herd dino. You can use those combat skills, you can use healing for your group, and you can be very effective that way. But the Lamb's always been good in that regard. The new TLC Lamb is great. And with the rodeo kick, you definitely can do a lot of damage very quickly, but you've got to be careful because you do not have the bulk to play around with anymore. I think you have to be a lot more precise to get your mileage out of this thing, but for the most part, I still love it. Like I said, the model and the skins are great, and as long as you know what you're doing, you can get away from most engagements with your life, either by running or fighting. I find most of the time when I die as this thing, it's either I'm too overconfident in the Lambeo skills, or they're just like more dinos than I thought. So I set into motion one plan of dealing with them, whether that be the tail kiting and standing to recover thing or an actual fight, and then another one comes out and it just completely throws off my whole thing there. So be careful as you're playing this guy, but it's a great dino, looks great, sounds great, and I love it. So yeah, that's about it. Thank you all for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.